Welcome to Germany. This is the Euros, where anything can happen. Let the fun begin.
Fights begin.
Thank you very much for coming. We're talking about the story, the road to Berlin, with the BBC Sport team and the people involved. And I think it's especially important for people who try to get their head around what does it mean to make an XR studio or 2 studios on 4 weeks in a row on live with an audience of how many million? I don't know. I asked John. John was, let's say, the father of the design approach. We have John Murphy here on that side, Phil, who is in charge of the money, and Mr. Lineker. You are the shadow of Mr. Lineker. On the other side, we have Chris from AE Live, who is doing the graphic and the data-based high-speed visualization of everything, and at least Faber, our partner, Steve, who is really the one who helped us to integrate our panels and to help the BBC to make the best out of it. John, we did the panel yesterday, so
We did.
no G&T involved. What would you say? How all that? Can you explain why do you have a crazy idea? Working with a partner like Gru, the most expensive in the market, to make an outdoor studio in Berlin, in an outdoor studio, and why does that? Why did you start that way?
So thanks, Olaf. Thanks for having us here. Anyway, firstly, on that, we obviously we started talking about. As you know, we started talking about LED panels and doing a project for extended reality, a couple of years ago, and we were just waiting for that right project to come along. And then obviously the Euros we felt was the perfect place for it. So last year IBC, obviously with Phil and Colin Harty, lead director, and obviously Faber and AE Live, they were all here. I think we started off those first conversations about it being a possibility. At that stage, unless Phil corrects me if I'm wrong, I don't think we knew we were going to have 2 studios, or definitely didn't know. No. So the 2 studios thing was a bit of, I suppose, for the creative was a bit of luck. Obviously, the benefit we got from that was that we were able to do the outside, as you can see with the LED floor at night time when it really kind of the lighting on the Brandenburg Gate really pinged, and then the inside we were able to do daytime. So that you didn't have the sun, obviously with an issue with the floor, and we were able to do the extended virtual reality football museum type feel in the panels left and right. So, that pretty much is how it started, really.
So when you all started it, you talked to Phil about money immediately, or was that just let's have an idea?
John doesn't worry about money.
Yeah, my job is not to worry about the money bit. So it's no, but in all fairness, obviously we do work with the BBC, so money is an issue, but it's less my job to kind of think about that. I just think about what we can potentially do with the technology, and then we come back to but is it possible, not just financially, technically, and all of those questions, which I thankfully don't have to answer, but. I just try and put the ideas forward.
Okay, we come back to that later, the design concept. But Phil, you were in contact with these guys who created this container village. You know them since years, and then you started. Normally, you have 1 studio, right?
Yeah, normally 1. So a couple of years out, we were approached by UEFA, and there was a proposition put forward about where the studios would be. I worked with BMS, who built the complex for many years, as you say. So literally, me and a couple of colleagues, we were sat in a Dunkin' Donuts opposite the gate.
No currywurst.
No, I didn't have a donut. believe it or not. I said, well, how about we build on the roof? Yeah. And they're like, well, I don't know. So then the question came up. Then there was all the big sell at the BBC. Why do you need two spaces? And we want a daytime, we want a nighttime. Eventually we got it over the line. And then it was over to all these very clever people to help visualise it. And I've been fortunate to be involved in a lot of these projects going back many years, studios in Cape Town, Moscow, etc. for football tournaments. And this is the best one I've ever been involved in, and it's got the best reaction of anything I've done. So hence, probably we sat here now.
Happy times. So a lot of people didn't realize that these are two studios because you glue them together into something, and maybe this is a right approach.
Well, if I can just say one thing, just to illustrate that very quickly, is that one of our lead talent walked into the studio the first time he went there and asked to go into the trophy room because he'd seen it on the TV, and I said, well, it's a screen. And he goes, no, the side room that's got it looks like a museum. Yeah. And I said, no, it's not real. And genuinely, that happened, and he was totally nonplussed.
It was
sorry.
Yeah, and he's right, and it was external as well. Viewers I think we've never done a studio where it had so much questions on social media from viewers actually wondering whether the Brandenburg Gate was real. They didn't know what was real and what wasn't. That was amazing, really. That sort of reaction, because a lot of the time with the studio, we put a lot of effort into our studios, but let's be honest, sometimes the viewer just wants to watch the football, don't they? It's but this gained so much reaction externally as well as internally.
Was it by accident or all?
It's all planned.
All planned. Oh well, it was a long plan. So imagine a container village on two levels. You have one level, so the Spanish broadcaster was on the right side, and the indoor studio was from the BBC was on one level one, and then you climb up a terrace, and on this terrace roof there's an LED outdoor floor, and there's an outdoor sport table. This was the setup, but from the outside, nobody got their head around how was that made. So maybe that's the right approach to our safe. Steve, you were involved in installing that floor into this wonderful container village. And I think Faber is normally known as the rock and roll company. They're doing all that stuff. Not Adele, I guess. No, Adele was not able.
That's painful. Olaf.
Yeah, that was painful. But normally you are used to events, you do all the stages. What was special with this container village?
I think what was special, of course, the location to start with. It's an iconic place in Berlin, obviously. And to be able to do that on that spot, realize this level of quality, because what we were talking about just before we went up stage, when I watched it back at home, I believed it. Sometimes you can tell something is VR, AR generated, but this was like, I was watching it from home, I know the studio, I've been in there, and I was like, I don't know what is left and what is right. I believed it, it was so good done. So that made that special, because you helped realizing something which is, I think, very exceptional in terms of what came out of it as a result. And on top of that, of course, as Faber, ROE, we had the whole installation for the BBC, and then in front of it we had the Brandenburg Gate, also using our product. So it was like, wow, this is big for us.
So Berlin was at that time totally Rue Faber-minded. You did the big wall at the Brandenburger Gate.
We received the keys from the mayor of Berlin for the duration of the championship.
But it was not always sunshine. There was a lot of sunshine in Berlin, and that made our floor at the top a bit warm. Can you tell us?
It did,
a bit more?
yeah.
You know. So honestly, John was a bit nervous by measuring 80 degrees, something like that, on the rooftop. So imagine you switch off the LED floor, it's black and it's absorbing the whole sun, and never had we estimated that Berlin is so sunny. And so we had a kind of concern that would be some damage. What did we do?
luckily, I had some fans in Berlin, surprisingly. So we installed them, and
You're not football fans?
no, fans ventilator. So we had the possibility to install some heat extraction ventilators. Well, actually, we pushed fresh air in at the end. We did it the other way around, but it worked very well. Next to that, thanks to the monitoring platform that we installed also, we had I could even from my cell phone see the temperature of the LED floor at every given time of the day. So we had constant tracking of all data, so we knew when we were going to hit the danger zone. And then, we installed the fans, and that basically solved the problem. But there's still some things you can do if you're not on air. You can cover it with a white sheet or something like that. So it was under control, but it was in fact maybe we should have, probably looking back at it, anticipated a bit more on that specific aspect. But I didn't expect that high temperatures, to be honest, because it's outdoor. Yeah.
And they got incredibly wet as well. Like, we had terrible thunderstorms, and the screens were able to cope with.
Yeah, but it's IP65. I can take it. So.
Yeah.
And that's proven now. So.
I paid just 500 euros to say that. No, I think the funny thing is we met all the challenges weather-wise we could, but it was at the end it was known as a challenge, and we went for it. It's bold. But let's introduce Chris, because Chris and A Live glued that all together in a kind of graphic world that we forgot about the physics. We forgot about the frames, the wood, and all that. How did you do that?
Yeah. So obviously there's a lot of people involved in a project like this.
Close.
The part that we were there to do was to make sure that the real-time graphics all came together, like you said. So we used Stipe systems for tracking.
You used Stipe?
Stipe, yeah. For tracking the cameras, and as well as getting the camera tracking data into Unreal Engine. And so in the indoor studio, we obviously had the two walls left and right, and then the AR set extension to give the whole roof, and the reverse studio as well that we saw there. And that was pretty difficult, trying to think about how to make sure that the colors looked correct in the walls and in the AR, especially given that the broadcast was happening at all times of the day, so throughout the day into night, and that was very tricky actually. Working out ways to work with lighting director, vision guarantee, to figure out what needs to happen when, especially when everything's changing, when you're going from dusk into night. The cameras are racking up, colors are changing. So that was interesting, exciting, but that was a big learning process. But I think we were really happy with the results. I think when you look at it, it looks pretty accurate. The what you see in the LED and what you see in the AR overlay, I think joins really, really well together.
Have you ever worked with LED before?
Yes, I think the previous World Cup in Russia 2018 that Phil mentioned earlier on was a similar setup. So it was a box studio, LED walls left and right, but the concept was more of a sort of creative style content in the walls. So there wasn't this need to join together the sort of real physical virtual AR set extensions and the content that was in those screens. So we did have the reverse studio on that, but this felt like the next version of what that project was, to be honest. And yeah, so not lots green screen before, but this is a sort of first big one we've done in this sort of situation.
Okay, I believe a lot of people would ask, what else was on the road? I think we didn't switch on the lights in Berlin. How can you describe, as BBC and a broadcaster, in this industry, we have a demand for safety, right? So redundancy, safety, these are all these measures. So we try to compensate that by testing things, and we did a test for John, because John was trying to convince his team he needs a glossy floor.
Yeah, well, it was, and Phil as well, and Colm. I think we had a few conversations. It was actually October. We visited Faber and obviously Rowe in the Netherlands, and obviously we saw the screens kind of in the initial what screens we wanted, and obviously we were very clear from a production point of view that we want a glossy floor. Now, obviously, you had people from the technical side saying, well, you can have too many reflections. You don't do glossy on live broadcast, but we won the battle, and actually all it did was add to the reality. The gloss floor with the real reflections just gave it that realism that kind of you would not have got with the matte version. So yeah, that was a big plus point.
So coming from design and all our wishes and dreams back to reality, Phil. The colleagues from Sky, they purchased LEDs some years ago, and they're doing MFN Studio. What they did this year, because of the election year, they switched the sports studio into an election studio because they want to show this LED setup is a very sustainable in terms of multiple use. Would you say the BBC is thinking about such business cases, or how after the Euro is BBC talking about what's next? How can we follow up on that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, everybody who's at IBC, it's, budgets are going a certain way for a lot of traditional broadcasters. What can we do to make things more sustainable? And so that's absolutely something we're looking at. I mean, the BBC, the news department, for example, is largely based in London, sport are in Manchester or Salford. So how can we combine as we look forward to future events like Women's Euros next year, or the World Cup for myself in 26? How can we better utilise the spaces we've got? And absolutely, that's sort of the direction of travel and what we want to try and do in the future.
So did that project help to clarify things, or?
I mean, what I would say, in about January, February, March of this year, there was a lot of reluctance. I was getting various sort of instructions that you're not having to presentation spaces, you don't need to, you don't need this, you don't need this. Unfortunately, managed to persuade them, look, this is gonna work. And if I'm honest, I had no idea if it would work or not, but I just said it would work. I was like the weather, and we discussed. You look at kick-off times, or when the sun's going down, the terrace screens we won't be able to see in certain lighting conditions, possibly. But everything worked much better, as I said, than I thought. So it's definitely helped going forward, because we've sort of proved the case, and hopefully we'll get the opportunity to do that again.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. I mean, I think the only problem it's caused us, and obviously a big thing for me is actually we've been working with green screen studios for a number of years now, and we've obviously got a green screen studio in Salford, and we use one at Dock 10 for our football coverage. The problem it's caused a little bit is that I just don't like going into the green screen studios anymore. So, it's definitely what that has done has certainly, changed our thought process about what we might want to do in the future, definitely.
And if I can just add to that, the impact on the talent as well. So...
What did he say, Mr. Lineker?
So for in the conversations beforehand, I was sort of trying to sell them the vision of the two spaces. And, for somebody like Gary or whatever, he's a man of a certain generation. Well, why have I got to move? When I'm in one studio, I don't need to move to another one. Just trust us. It will look great. And ultimately, if it makes you look better, you're going to be happy, aren't you? And it makes him sound, he's actually, to be fair, very easygoing. So just bear with us. And then we got to a situation where, because of the screens, he could see everything, Shearer, Rio Ferdinand, Fabregas, people like that were working with us. And in the end, they were asking us to go upstairs. So the theory behind it editorially was that pre-match, we would be downstairs, so we could do the more sort of analysis, pre-match build-up, by which time the sun's gone down. We then move upstairs for the sort of in-match period, sort of, I suppose, the more reflective side of it, and then hopefully got the best of both worlds. So that's what we attempted to do, and I think we did.
So we have to close the talk. Marina gets very nervous. Just a quick statement from everybody. Steve, would you do it again?
Sure.
Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, of course. There's loads more we'd love to invest into it as well.
John, would you do it again?
100%.
Would you pay for it?
Depends on the negotiations, Olaf, so I'll see you on the boat later.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this talk. Thank you.